Trying to find a good isekai to watch is like trying to find a diamond in a landfill. Nearly impossible. But if you swim through the trash for long enough, you might just find what you're looking for. Mushoku Tensei is that diamond. If you've seen the anime, you probably would agree with me. And if you've read the light novel, you definitely would agree with me. Mushoku Tensei is, dare I say, nearly perfect. But what makes it so good? What does this isekai do that other isekai don't? That is what I'll be answering in this video. And to start to answer that, we have to start at the beginning. Every isekai begins with the main character getting transported to a new world, typically a fantasy world where they can do things that were impossible in their previous life. And usually in isekai, how and why they got transported to another world isn't really important. Even the main character's entire past life is usually just irrelevant to who they are in their new world. So isekai that make these details integral to the story always stand out. Think of Re:Zero, Saga of Tanya the Evil, No Game No Life, and in the case of this video, Mushoku Tensei. In his past life, Rudeus was bullied to the point of being too scared to even leave his house. And when he took a chance and left his house, he died. Yeah, that didn't help his phobia. So when he woke up in a new world, this fear of the outside world didn't just disappear. It was something he had to overcome. The author could have made Rudeus overcome his fear on his own, but instead the author strengthened Rudeus' relationship with Roxy by having Roxy be the one to help him overcome his fear. So if Rudeus' past life is relevant, what about the how and why of his reincarnation? Well, that's not something the anime has got to yet, so I won't spoil it. But I will say there is an interesting reason why he was reincarnated, and his reincarnation into the Mushoku Tensei world is extremely important to the overarching story. You know what else is important to the story? Rudeus' parents. Whoa, calm down. I know it's crazy. Parents in an isekai being relevant? Unheard of. But yes, Rudeus' parents, Paul and Zenith Greyrat, are important to the story. And usually in other isekai or anime in general, if the main character has parents, they kind of get combined together into one character. Like they're always together, they don't have much of personality, and in general they're just flat characters. But not in Mushoku Tensei, because in Mushoku Tensei, Paul and Zenith are individuals and they each have their own purposes in the story, and they each have their own unique personalities. We all know that Paul is a bit of a player, and this is something that has bit him in the butt on more than one occasion, but also this isn't an exclusively negative trait. Paul for a long time struggled to bond with Rudeus because he didn't get to teach Rudeus things a father typically gets to teach his son, due to Rudeus already knowing everything. But when Rudeus messed things up with Sylphie, Paul finally discovered a way to bond with his son. He could teach Rudeus how to deal with girls, and in doing this, Rudeus was able to get over yet another flaw he had from his past life. And Paul's importance to the story doesn't end here, because Paul is one of the people heading the mission to find all the people displaced from the metastasis event. Zenith, on the other hand, I'm not going to talk much about. Not because she's not important, but because the couple of arcs she's very important in have not been shown in the anime yet. Another thing I love about Mushoku Tensei is that the world doesn't feel like it started when the main character arrived. As you go through the series, you learn more and more about the past and all the things that led to making the world how it is now. I feel like typically the main character in an anime feels like the most important person in the world, and everything revolves around them to some degree. But in Mushoku Tensei, it feels like while Rudeus is an important figure, he's only part of the bigger picture. He's just one person in a world full of unique people who have their own lives, their own hopes, and their own dreams. If you haven't got it by now, I'm trying to say the world building is good, okay? The author does a phenomenal job of making you feel like you're experiencing a living, breathing world. And the anime does something amazing to add on to the already exceptional world building of the light novel, and that is it doesn't have an opening. I should clarify, it doesn't have a traditional opening where a banger song is playing and the characters are dancing or punching the air, but instead it uses the minute or two of the episode where the opening would be to show us the world outside the story. We see the family's house reacting to a blizzard, Rudeus practicing his magic, townspeople keeping out of the rain while going about their daily activities, Elise meeting new friends, the squad traveling by a boat through a beautiful landscape, Rudeus using magic as a utility instead of a weapon, and even people rebuilding from the metastasis event. Seeing all these things that we don't get to see in other anime immerses us further into the Mushoku Tensei world, and we get more attached to the characters because we see them acting like real people who are living in a real world. And speaking of characters, one thing I love about the characters in Mushoku Tensei is that a lot of the characters you think aren't that important end up having bigger roles and are more involved in the story as time goes on. Two examples from the anime are Zenoba and Pax. After the arc with them in the anime, I never expected to see them again. And in most other series, you probably wouldn't see them again. But in the light novel, they both come back and they both are important to the story. The author does a fantastic job of making use of all the characters in the story, to the point that every character that is introduced feels like a piece of the main story's puzzle, and with even one piece missing, the puzzle can't be completed. What's even more insane to me is how every character actually feels like a real person. a person who's lived a life, accomplished things, made mistakes and learned from those mistakes. You actually feel like you can relate to characters because when they're sad, you feel sad. When they're happy, you feel happy. And because of these reasons, you feel far more attached to the characters in this story than you do in most other anime and manga. And all the things I've just mentioned especially apply to the main character Rudeus. And Rudeus makes a ton of mistakes throughout the series. These mistakes have different results. Sometimes the result is just an embarrassing situation, while other mistakes result in people dying. Yet all of Rudeus' mistakes have one result in common: him learning, him growing as a person. He never makes the same mistake twice. Another thing about Rudeus, he's not the strongest character in the story. Sure, he's far stronger than your average person, but throughout the story he faces opponents far stronger than himself. And this fact alone separates Mushoku Tensei from most of the dumpster fire trash Isekai series out there. But also Rudeus not ever being the strongest means we can watch him become stronger throughout the entire series. It's just one more way we can watch him grow. Going back to the dumpster fire trash Isekai thing, if it had no redeeming qualities, no one would watch it. So what do people like about dumpster fire trash Isekai? Well, personally, I'm attracted to the fantasy worlds where people use magic and spells and they have interesting abilities. I like the different levels of weapons and armor. I even like the adventure guilds and the situations they offer. And these things that are the good, interesting aspects of dumpster fire trash Isekai are all still present within Mushoku Tensei. But you also get to add on an actually interesting story with a main character who actually struggles to succeed and doesn't just one-tap everything he fights. There's one more thing I want to talk about regarding the story, and that's the turning points. Throughout the series, there are a total of 5 turning points. Throughout the story, these turning points are perfectly placed where when the story slows a bit or the action plateaus, right there is a turning point. And this is perfect for resetting the pace of the story to make it move faster and in the right direction. I'm also going to say there is a ton of foreshadowing in the first season, but it won't be until season 3 of the anime at the earliest that you'll be able to understand what was being foreshadowed. But when we do get to that point, you'll be able to look back in the first season and be like, yo! When we put everything I've talked about together, it's easy to see why Mushoku Tensei is the king of Isekai. Whether it's the main character, the side characters, the world building, the power system, the plot, the pacing, the visuals, it's all perfect. And it all works perfectly together to give us one of the most beautiful, immersive stories of all time. Let me know what you thought of the video in the comments. Thank you for watching, stay slippery, butter out.